Liberal MP Yasser Naqvi's worry based on how the Liberal Party accepts new members. Head to their website, say you're over 14, provide a Canadian address, and you're officially a Liberal. No payment required. That means over 3 million non-permanent residents in Canada, including international students and temporary foreign workers, would be allowed to vote in the upcoming leadership race.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the hypocrisy from the Liberal Party. Now, these guys love to talk about foreign interference, yet seem to be encouraging it within their own party, as you heard from the opener. We're also going to be taking a look at some of the buzz around the candidacy for the next leader of the Liberal Party. A surprising announcement, at least to me, of an individual who said he won't be running, as well as a list from Canadian officials that have been that's been reported on items that they're going to be going tit for tat with on Donald Trump if he decides to impose these tariffs. Now, some of the items on this list are laughable in my opinion, but we'll get there in a sec. Right now, let's get back into this foreign interference situation.
Well, the rules aren't set to replace Justin Trudeau, Donna, but the Liberal Party is poised to allow people who can't vote in the next federal election to be eligible to pick the next prime minister.
When the Constitution was written for the party, the foreign interference as we know it now was not as big of a concern, but things have changed.
I will be encouraging our party executive to make sure that we have all the rules in place to ensure there is no foreign interference.
But the party seems unwilling to change eligibility requirements. Our open and inclusive process ensures we hear from more people in the communities we engage with, the party said in a statement, a sentiment backed by a former party president who believes a short leadership race will make it harder for foreign actors to impact.
We have the technology that enables you to verify identification and totally avoid any risk of foreign interference.
The Liberal Party has been subject to foreign interference claims previously. Global News reported CSIS had intelligence that the Chinese consulate in Toronto allegedly helped bus in international students to vote in the 2019 Don Valley North Liberal nomination meeting. The interim report from the Public Inquiry into Foreign Interference said there was, quote, strong indications that students likely voted for the consulate's preferred candidate. Foreign interference in a national race, a possibility, according to a former head of CSIS.
There may be some pathways that still exist where people who have connections to foreign governments might still have some influence in the process.
The NDP and Conservatives both require payment and for someone to be a permanent resident or Canadian citizen to join their party, Donna. Much stricter rules compared to the Liberals, who will discuss their leadership race further tomorrow when their caucus meets.
Now, I don't even know where to go with this information. I can't say that I'm that surprised that this is what the progressive Liberals have been doing, allowing 14-year-olds and non-residents just vote. You don't have to pay. You're automatically a Liberal member. And as you said, that's 3.5 million individuals who could potentially swing some sort of votes in certain areas. And kudos to the NDP. They do the same process like the Conservatives, where you actually have to pay and you have to be a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. Like, that makes sense. To have it as just open and willy-nilly, especially to people who aren't even eligible at age. Like, you have to be 18 and older to vote. And they're allowing 14-year-olds to just register. Doesn't make any sense to me. But then they're saying that the short leadership race will make it difficult for individuals to have any foreign interference. That could potentially be true, but if you listen to Brian Lilley from the Toronto Sun, he actually makes a very solid point in regards to foreign interference that we've already experienced on a much lower importance of a level in terms of elections. Take a listen.
Brian, we found out recently during the foreign interference inquiry that teenagers from other nations who are not even citizens of Canada were voting in Liberal candidate nomination races. Now, do those same rules apply when the Liberal Party is choosing its next leader and the Prime Minister of Canada?
They do, and it's utterly insane how. We could have, in the case of the Han-Dong nomination back in 2019, the one that was talked about at the foreign interference inquiry, high school and college kids from China were bussed in to vote for Dong at the request or insistence of the Chinese consulate in Toronto. If China is going to go to the bother of interfering in a nomination race for a safe Liberal seat for a guy who's never going to be put into cabinet, what do you think they're going to do when the prime ministership of a G7 is up for grabs? So the Liberal rules don't require you to be a citizen of Canada to vote. They don't require you to be 18. None of the rules that apply for voting in a general election to choose the government apply here, but these people can all vote to choose the next prime minister through the Liberal leadership race. You just need to be 14 years of age and ordinarily reside in the riding. What does that mean? It's very vague. So yeah, you could have teenagers from China. You could have seniors visiting from India. You know, they show something with their name on a piece of mail, and they're going to vote. You could have people organizing from all kinds of countries. Russia organizing. People who are not citizens and couldn't vote will help pick the new PM. We really need to change the rules around all the parties. The NDP is a little bit better. The Conservatives are a bit better than them. The Liberals have the loosest rules going, and right now they're the governing party. So it's open season for foreign interference in choosing our next prime minister.
Yeah, and that's the scary part because it is open season. As Brian stated, if these guys were willing to go as far as interfering with a low-level riding that was going to be Liberal anyways, who's to say they don't get involved in the leadership race for the next Liberal Party member or the prime ministerial race? Like, it just makes sense, especially when you have such lax rules. And as Global News pointed out, they are talking about potentially changing the rules. And today on Vashi, she was actually at in Parliament questioning some of the MPs after they had their 6-hour caucus meeting. And she questioned them on this. Take a listen.
What are your key priorities, Mr. Sousa, that you wanted to convey to the party's leadership about how this race should unfold?
Well, they're not just my priorities. I think they're shared priorities by Canadians as well, to ensure there's integrity in the system as we move forward. We're going to have a truncated process, which is not normal. I mean, I don't think any time in Canadian history we had to go through a process as quickly as we're doing it now. And so Canadians want to make certain that there's integrity in the system, that the process is followed in a way that protects the interests of Canadians, and that we select a strong, robust leader who's serious, who can lead this country and defend national interests.
Some of the concerns going in around exactly what Mr. Sousa is laying out were around who can essentially vote in this and whether or not the rules would change to prevent non-citizens, basically. Do you anticipate that the leadership of the party is open to changing those kinds of rules?
Just as a reminder, after every election, Election Canada reviews its rules, and I think the party needs to do the same thing. We're about to go into a leadership, and I think it's important that they look at the rules the way they are. They were put together many years ago, and they need to be reviewed and updated to reflect what 2025 is, quite possibly. But we made all of those points today about the integrity of the system. It has to be not just perceived to be correct and transparent. We have to make sure that there's transparency and honesty throughout the process. And I think they heard our concerns today.
Is it your sense, Mr. Sousa, because you were being pretty frank about this on the way into the meeting, that they are open to making those changes? Because they had previously telegraphed to media before this caucus that they were going to keep things status quo.
No, they're very open to. They've certainly heard us loud and clear, and they have.
Consensus, do you think,
they have made no decision has been made. I'm not going to presuppose what the board's going to do, but they heard very clearly the concerns that not only that we as members have, but certainly as Canadians have, and so we want to make certain that those that have been loyal members of the party, those that have engaged with the parties over time, those that may have not renewed their membership, who want to now be part of this process, they recognize that those people are important. But they also recognize that issues of foreign interference is a real issue. An issue that is not just relevant to the Liberal Party of Canada and this particular process. It's been an issue with the Conservative Party, with a leader who's not taken his security clearance for that very reason. So we have to be mindful that we need to ensure that whoever's chosen, and this is an exciting time for Canada, to ensure that we bring forward a leader as an alternative to extremism. And there's an extremism in the parts of the Conservative Party, and for that matter in the NDP. And most Canadians, I believe, are more centric than that.
Yeah, because the party that's trying to move back to the center because they've gone so far left and extreme, they're indistinguishable from the NDP pretty much, is saying that the Conservatives are the ones that are extremists. Like, get a grip of yourself, Sousa. And Vashi actually pushes back, making this point, saying there's a vast public opinion that says that these guys are not extremists. The polls say the same. It's not a small fringe group that are trying to get the Conservatives in party. A vast majority of Canadians are. Just take a listen.
I just want to follow up on that because I think that the Conservatives would push back against the characterization of them as extreme and point to public opinion polling, which shows a wide swath of Canadians, not just a small group of hard-right Canadians, but a wide swath of Canadians have been supportive of them over the last year to a much greater degree than your party. When you talk about moving back to the centre, can you be specific about what that means? Does it mean, for example, moving on from the consumer price on carbon? Does it mean abandoning the changes to capital gains, the inclusion rate? Like, what does it mean?
You know, the party is a very progressive party, and the Prime Minister is a very progressive individual, and he's shown a lot of integrity. A lot has been done to support Canadians: dental care, pharmacare, child care. The economy has grown tremendously over that period of time as well. And many affluent individuals have benefited from our economic growth. But we have to be mindful of ensuring that middle-class citizens, that those that are had less advantages, are taken care of. And that's why governments exist. And I would argue that that the neocon that's sort of developing around Canada and the world, for that matter, there's some degree of frustrations. And so we have to ensure that they have a better alternative. And I think once we've finished with the leadership race that we're having here in Canada, they'll have a much more positive alternative going forward, one that unites Canada.
Yeah, the last thing that the Liberal parties are going to do is unite anything. You guys have torn everything to shreds. You've torn the country apart. And when he was talking about economic growth because of dental care, pharmacare, child care, if you looked at Vashi, she gave like this smirk on her face, like, what the hell are you talking about, economic growth? The country is probably in the worst state that it could possibly be. You have a deficit that's over by 50%, $62 billion deficit. Like, what is he going on about? And she actually pushes back saying, so if you agree with these policies, what do you think is going to get the middle class back? And these guys just simply think it's because Justin Trudeau was in power. It wasn't because of the dumb things that they implemented or were trying to implement, like BC11, BC63, all these stupid bills that they're trying to implement. It's not their policies. It's nothing like that. It's simply because people didn't like Justin Trudeau, which, don't get me wrong, is definitely a factor. But these guys are just so delusional, they can't add two and two together.
So let me ask you, do you agree with that sentiment, first of all, Ms. Sgro? And second of all, do you think, in all reality, your party has the ability to convince particularly middle-class Canadians, whom were with you in 2015 in great numbers, that they still should come back to you after they feel abandoned over the last few years?
Well, I think we've done a lot of excellent policies that we have brought in that have helped thousands of Canadians. For whatever reason, and you know, there is a cycle of 10 years in, 10 years out if you're lucky to survive that long. The PM was in 9.5 years. People wanted change. And when you asked them why they wanted the change, they were just tired of the PM, but not necessarily tired of our policies. So I think going forward with new leadership, a reinvigoration of our party, that we will get a very positive response. We want to make sure that everything that we've heard today, that we're doing over the next while, is reflective of how Canadians are feeling out there, what they want to see, what they want to hear. And even if it's a short time to have this campaign, we want to take an abundance of caution to make sure that it's done properly, transparency is there, and people are confident in the process, because the person is going to be the Prime Minister. It's not just electing a leader. Even if it's for a very short time, it's the Prime Minister for a day, a week, 6 months, whatever it is until the election. So it's imperative this be done properly and that Canadians are comfortable with the process.
If I could just respectfully push back on the idea, Mr. Sousa, that it's not the policies that Canadians are upset with, it was just the person at the top. What evidence do you really have of that? Yes, people were sick of the Prime Minister, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but public opinion polling bears that out. But your party's brand is also not is also being damaged more largely. Like, what evidence do you have that just putting a new face at the top, when you're contending with opposition parties like the Conservatives are going to throw all their money at telling people nothing has changed, what evidence do you have that you'll be able to convince them otherwise?
I mean, the biggest piece of evidence is that we are a party of over 100 years.
Did you hear that, guys? That's all the proof that Charles here needs, is that they've been a party for over 100 years. At this point, I hope that they lose their party status just so this guy can wake up and smell the roses. They're so delusional in what they can accomplish. They just really need like a slap back into reality. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's been a lot of buzz in terms of the candidates for the leadership race. We have the typical people, Freeland, Jolie, all that kind of stuff. But one individual that the CBC reported that said that he's not going to be running is Dominic LeBlanc, which actually surprised me. It seems like a lot of the MPs actually want him, and one of the MPs thinks that he's got what it takes to beat Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, so let's go over, remind people of that list of people mulling over the job. Although there is one declared candidate, and that's businessman Frank Baylis. And then in terms of non-Liberal MPs, Mark Carney, of course, we all know he's mulling things over. But from Caucus, we've got Francois-Philippe Champagne, Jonathan Wilkinson, Stephen McKinnon, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, and of course, Melanie Joly. Now you might notice there's a name I didn't mention that's, was someone people were considering as a front runner, and that is Dominic LeBlanc, who is the newly minted finance minister. He has said this morning in a statement and then on camera that he is not going to run for the leadership. And he explained his reasoning, saying that as finance minister and as the lead in terms of the cabinet committee on U.S. or Canada-U.S. relations, as that's his job, and he says that's too important a job to focus on something else. That is the job he's going to focus on. But coming out of caucus, once MPs had learned of that, we learned that there is still an effort to get him to change his mind. Have a listen.
Are you hoping Mr. Minister LeBlanc will reconsider?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
And
did you tell him that?
Yes, I did. He is highly respected amongst all of caucus, and I think of a lot of Canadians.
Dominic LeBlanc, should he change his mind?
He absolutely should. He has what it takes to beat Pierre Poilievre.
But of course, to no surprise, it would be Jennifer O'Connell that would think that Dominic LeBlanc could be Pierre Poilievre at this point. Like, more just liberal delusion. But as we pivot to the CBC, and as I mentioned in the beginning, they were talking about a tit-for-tat list that some government officials have come up with in terms of retaliation for Trump and his tariff situation. Now, some of the items on this list, I guess, kind of make sense. But then you have things like Florida orange juice. And I wish I was making that up, but take a listen.
More about what you're learning about the Canadian response to Trump's tariff threat.
So there is a list circulating in Ottawa among officials, a confidential list, with all of the different American-made products that Canadian officials are considering targeting should Canada have to retaliate against Donald Trump and if he imposes those tariffs. Remember, Donald Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs on both Canada and Mexico unless there were significant improvements made to border security, lumping the challenges at the border, both the northern border and the southern border together, even though they're very different situations, saying he was going to do it on his first day in office. Well, ever since that threat was made, officials in Ottawa have been working to figure out how they would respond if Donald Trump makes good on that threat. And it is expected to be some sort of tit-for-tat retaliation, at least one aspect of it. And this is according to a senior Canadian government source. It's that kind of style of retaliation. So there is a list of all of these American-made goods that Canada is considering. The list is not yet finalized, but some of the items on that list include a wide range of steel and aluminum products, ceramics like sinks and toilets, glassware, flowers, types of plastics, and Florida orange juice. Now, some of these items are going to be selected strategically, and that is in the hopes of extracting maximum political leverage.
Now, the fact that she just said Florida orange juice followed by the words selected strategically for maximum political leverage proves to me that this government is a complete joke. And she also started off by saying that this is a list that's been circulating amongst officials, a confidential list, but then goes and gives everything that's on the list. Like, am I losing my mind here? Am I going crazy? What is going on with our government that they think that this is the way to handle these things? And she tries to give some sort of explanation saying that they are targeting specific places, and the Florida orange juice is because Trump has adopted Florida as his new home. Just take a listen.
This go around, some of the items are being selected to send a message as well. Those steel products, I'm told many of them are made in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Michigan and Pennsylvania are considered swing states. Ohio is solidly Republican territory right now. And then, of course, Florida orange juice. That is meant to send a message to the heart of Trump's adopted home state and really right now the new center of American power. Again, I am told this is according to a senior Canadian government source, and the items could change. Right. Of course, Canada hopes it doesn't have to respond and hopes that those tariffs aren't imposed. But as CBC News has previously reported, people around the Prime Minister are increasingly concerned. Trump's mind is made up and he's going to go ahead and do it.
At this point, I don't know. If you guys tell him that the Florida orange juice is on the chopping block, he might back up. But anyways, guys, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about all this. If you made it this far, throw some oranges in your comment just so I know. Just so I know. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.